Hi, I'm Tamsin. They said there wasn't a seat left for me at the family dinner, but I saw the table 12 chairs, and one of them had my name crossed out in red ink. My mom looked me in the eye and said, "Did you really think you were invited?" That night, I didn't cry. I asked the maitre d' to let the owner know I was here. They laughed, but then he walked out and kissed my hand. Before we begin, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. Now let me tell you what happened the night my whole family found out. I wasn't just a guest, I owned the damn place. The message buzzed my phone just as I stepped out of the shower. I wrapped myself in a towel, still damp, and glanced at the screen out of habit. It was a photo, a group shot. Big smiles, crystal wine glasses lifted mid-toast. The lighting looked expensive, warm, dim, curated. La Seraphine read the location tag. It was my family. My parents were seated at the center, just like they always insisted. My sisters dressed to the nines flanked them with their husbands leaning in close. Even Junie, my 10-year-old niece, had a little mocktail in hand and a sparkly headband. Everyone looked like they belonged. The caption under the photo was what stopped me cold. Family complete. Junie had tagged me by mistake. I stood in the middle of my living room, hair dripping, the soft buzz of the space heater barely registering. I scrolled up and down the photo, like maybe I'd missed myself in it. Maybe I'd somehow stepped into the frame without knowing. But of course not. I hadn't been there. I hadn't even known about it. I opened my messages. No missed texts. No invite. No, "Hey, are you coming tonight?" Nothing. Then I remembered something. Just a week ago, I'd passed by the kitchen at my parents' house. Alara had been speaking low, assuming I was upstairs or gone. Just don't let her ruin the vibe. Don't even tell her, she had said. Her voice was syrupy, tight. I had laughed it off, figured she was joking. Now I realized she wasn't. She had meant every word. I should have felt rage, or heartbreak, or something dramatic enough to match the size of the betrayal. But what I felt was quieter. Like someone had flipped a switch inside me and turned the light off. I dried my hair slowly, dressed carefully, black slacks, a structured blazer, a soft blouse, no red lipstick, no high heels, nothing that screamed for attention. I wasn't going there to make a scene. I ordered a ride to the restaurant. It was a 20-minute drive, and the whole way there, I kept repeating the same sentence in my head like a mantra. If I was never meant to belong, I'd like to hear it to my face. The restaurant loomed ahead, all glass and gold accents, like something pulled out of a lifestyle magazine. Couples strolled in under the soft glow of vintage lanterns. I stepped out of the car, adjusted my bag on my shoulder, and walked in like I had a reservation. Because in some alternate world, maybe I did. The maitre d' stood tall and polished behind his podium. I gave him a calm smile. "Hi, I'm here for the Sinclair party." He tapped into the system eyes darting over the screen. "Reservation for 6 under Morgan Sinclair," he said after a beat. "I'm sorry, but I don't see your name listed." I stayed still. "I'm her daughter," I said. Just as the words left my mouth, I heard the click of expensive heels on marble behind me. Then that voice honeyed, but hard-edged. "Did you really think you were invited?" I turned slowly. There she was, my mother, Morgan Sinclair, always pristine, never warm. Her makeup was flawless, her jewelry subtle but screaming wealth. And behind her, my sisters, Ilara with her smugness, Blythe already halfway into a smirk, their husbands, awkward, pretending not to look. My father trailed in last, quiet and unreadable. "I figured someone just forgot to send the invite," I said, my voice steady. Morgan's lips curved in a thin smile. "Oh, honey, we didn't forget. This place is a little out of your league. You know how hard it is to keep the atmosphere right." My heart should have pounded. My ears should have rung. Instead, I just stood there, hands folded in front of me like I had all the time in the world. Guests were starting to glance our way. A few heads tilted. I saw someone lean toward their date and whisper. The maitre d' shifted awkwardly behind his stand eyes flicking between us. "We simply don't have a seat left," he repeated, his voice neutral, rehearsed. Charlotte giggled. "It's a full house, sis." I looked at my father. He avoided my gaze, stared at the wine list like it held the answers. That was the thing about my family. They were very good at pretending things didn't exist if they weren't convenient. I nodded once, slowly. Right. No seat left. My mother looked pleased. Alara reached for her champagne. Blythe whispered something behind her hand. I smiled. It was the kind of smile you give when you finally see everything clearly, when the fog lifts and you realize you've been the only one hoping for something that never existed. Then I turned back to the maitre d'. "Would you please let the owner know Claire's here?" The way my mother's face twitched at the name, Claire not Tamsin, was subtle but unmistakable. "Oh, please," she laughed. "The owner doesn't take walk-ins, darling." I didn't respond. I didn't look at her again. I just waited, and I wasn't going to wait long. The maitre d' paused. His eyes flicked toward the private dining room, then back at me. For a moment, I saw something behind his professional polish, a flicker of uncertainty. He gave a shallow nod and walked briskly into the back hallway. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, clear and dripping with sugar-coated disdain. "Oh, please, you think the owner knows you?" Alara let out a soft laugh, loud enough to carry across the marble floors. Blythe raised her wine glass and mocked toast. I kept my posture still, my chin steady, though my palms had started to sweat. I didn't turn around. I just waited. It wasn't about proving anything to them anymore. It was about reminding myself I wasn't the girl they used to ignore and manipulate. I had built a whole life beyond their control, and I had every right to stand here. A soft shift in the room's energy made me look up. There he was. Laziel stepped into the front lobby like he owned the oxygen in the room. Tall, composed, his tailored navy suit hugged his frame like it was sewn on him. He didn't smile for anyone until his eyes landed on me. His whole face softened. "Claire," he said, his voice low and rich like aged bourbon. I took a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "It's been a long time," I replied, "far too long." The murmurs around us quieted. A few heads turned. Behind me, the scrape of a wine glass against china broke the tension. Laziel looked over at the maitre d' who had just returned. "Please prepare a table for Miss Claire. I'll handle it personally." The man gave a crisp nod and scurried off. My mother's heels clicked behind me as she stepped closer, voice cool and overly polite. "Laziel, this is a family dinner." He turned to her with the kind of polished patience that only comes from being above the petty. "Then I'm afraid it's incomplete without her." There, it was no shouting, no drama, just a simple sentence that hit harder than any raised voice. My father, who had yet to say a word, shifted in his seat, adjusted his watch like it had suddenly grown uncomfortable on his wrist. Valora narrowed her eyes, her lips pressed into a tight line. Laziel turned toward their table. "Would you prefer we seat Miss Claire separately, or can we make room at yours?" The table fell into awkward silence. Blythe looked down at her plate, then at her clutch on the chair beside her. Valora finally muttered, "There's no space." Without missing a beat, Laziel smiled faintly. "Then we'll move your table." Claire deserves to be seated comfortably. Within seconds, staff materialized like clockwork. Tables shifted, chairs replaced. A full rearrangement occurred, not because I demanded it, but because someone with actual authority said I mattered for once. Gasps and glances rippled through nearby diners. I caught an older couple whispering as they watched. One of them smiled faintly at me like they understood more than they let on. I turned to Laziel. "You didn't have to do all this. He leaned in, slightly, voice quiet, so only I could hear. You should have expected it. I blinked, not sure how to respond. No one had stood up for me like this before. Not at this scale, not in public. It was the kind of gesture my family thought only they were worthy of receiving. One of the servers motioned to a newly arranged seat beside Valora. Laziel placed his hand lightly at the small of my back, guiding me. I walked toward the table, spine, straight, steps controlled. Not defiant, just certain. I sat down. The silence was thick. My mother's mouth had hardened into a polite grimace. Ilara tried to look unaffected, but her eyes darted between me and Laziel like she'd missed a page in the script. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. As I adjusted my napkin, Valora hissed under her breath. What the hell is going on? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself. The waiter poured me a glass of sparkling water, as if it were the most natural thing in the world that I belonged here all along. The menu appeared in front of me, and I took my time opening it. Then my mother did what she always does when the center of gravity shifts. She grabbed it back. She leaned forward, lips tight, eyes locked on me. How do you even know him? I paused. Set my menu down, slowly, met her gaze with a calm that had taken years to build. But I didn't answer. Not yet. How do you even know him? My mother snapped, her voice flat but sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't flinch. I let her question settle like smoke, letting it curl around the edges of the table before I lifted my gaze from the rim of my glass. I knew Laziel long before any of you knew me. I said evenly, my voice low but firm. Before I married into this family, I worked in fine dining. Laziel was my mentor. You could hear the air shift. Chairs stopped creaking. Silverware went still mid-cut. Valora's eyes went wide. Zinnia mouthed a silent no way, her disbelief hanging in the air like steam off a forgotten teacup. My mother blinked, her expression frozen somewhere between confusion and condescension. You mean you were a server? I didn't rise to the bait? No, I said plainly. I was in management training, front-of-house operations, budgeting, payroll, hiring, conflict resolution. My father let out a single cough, but it wasn't from choking. It was from realization. Laziel turned toward the table, his voice measured but proud. Claire didn't just train here. She shadowed me personally. Her floor plans, customer flow algorithms, and staff onboarding systems are still used in all 3 locations. His words landed like soft thunder. Callista let out a brittle laugh. How charming. I thought you went into non-profit work or something. No, you assumed that I said because it was easier to picture me filing papers than directing operations. The room stilled again. I took a slow sip of water. Not wine, just water. I wanted every part of this moment to be clear. I didn't just work here, I continued. I invested. The expansion in Laguna. My name's on the founding contract. Valora blinked too fast, like she was trying to keep from reacting. Her hand trembled just slightly as she adjusted her napkin. Zinnia sat back, visibly trying to compute everything. Her husband, Adam, finally broke the silence. You never told me she was involved. Valora didn't look at him. She whispered, We thought it didn't matter. Didn't matter. I tucked that phrase away like a knife. It didn't sting. It just confirmed what I had always known. Invisibility wasn't an accident. It was policy. Laziel stepped in again, this time softer, but the authority remained. Claire holds a 50% stake in not the silence of politeness or awkwardness, but the silence that comes when people realize they've miscalculated. Badly. Valora nearly dropped her wine glass. Callista's grip on her fork tightened. My mother's lips pressed into a line so thin it nearly vanished. I let it sit. The waitstaff returned, carrying small white plates with delicately arranged bites, apple chèvre tartlets with a dusting of smoked sea salt. The amuse-bouche was from one of my original drafts for Le Seraphine's fall tasting menu, back when I still believed my ideas would be credited under my own name someday. One of the younger servers leaned toward Laziel. "This was from her book, right?" she said, almost whispering. Laziel nodded. Inspired by Claire's seasonal menus, she has an eye for rhythm, for timing. As if on cue, he looked at me. "You look stronger than you did back then." I smiled. "I am." He didn't press, didn't ask why. And that's why I trusted him. He didn't need me to explain my survival. Across the table, Adam shifted uncomfortably. "You never talked about this," he said. Callista snapped. Because it was ancient history and half the things she did weren't even hers, she was just copying Laziel. I looked directly at her. "You'd be surprised what you can accomplish when you're the one doing the actual work." It was the kind of sentence you don't raise your voice for. The power was in how little effort it needed. She stared at me for a long beat. Then, in the kind of calm that's sharper than any scream, she said, "Well, some of us build legacies. Others just decorate them." My fingers brushed the stem of my glass. I didn't look away. Because I knew what she meant. And she had no idea that the chandelier above her was hanging from the very ceiling I had helped fund. The sentence hung in the air, delicate and poisonous. Some of us build legacies, others just decorate them. I set my fork down, not slammed, just the quiet, deliberate sound of silver meeting porcelain. I looked at Callista, not with anger, but with a kind of pity that had taken me years to learn to wear well. "I didn't decorate anything," I said simply. "I financed it." Her lips pressed together, but her chin lifted. My mother didn't flinch either. Her posture shifted, though. Shoulders straighter, spine locked, like she was bracing for impact, or maybe just pretending to be unbothered. Laziel didn't say a word, but his presence alone held weight. The air around him steadied mine. I looked to my left, toward the person who'd remained the most silent this whole time, my father. His steak was perfectly sliced, every piece symmetrical. He chewed each bite methodically, as if trying to time his movements so he wouldn't have to speak. His eyes never once lifted from the plate. "Dad," I asked gently, not to challenge, just to see, maybe even hope. He paused, but only for a second. Then his fork lifted again. Another bite. Still no eye contact. And that stung more than I expected. The kind of pain that didn't leave a mark, but settled in your chest like a stone. Even now, even after all of this, I was still the wrong daughter. Callista didn't miss a beat. She stirred her drink and spoke without looking up. "He's just trying to keep the peace, dear." Peace? I almost laughed. Peace never once included me. Peace in this family always meant ignoring the problem child, the outlier, the one who couldn't blend into their carefully curated photo ops. Before I could speak, I felt a soft tug on my sleeve. Junie, Zinnia's youngest, no more than 7. Her curls a tangle of rebellion, her face still untrained in the art of keeping things in. "Auntie Tamsin," she whispered, "I wish you were sitting next to me." The table froze. A knife clinked against a plate. Zinnia's mouth opened, then shut. Her cheeks went red. "Junie," she said, voice tight. "Please, go back to your seat." Junie lingered, just for a beat longer than polite. And that was enough. It landed. Even a child could see it. The arrangement. The exclusion. The way chairs were filled not by love, but by convenience. Laziel leaned in just enough that I could hear him. "She sees what they pretend not to." I gave Junie's hand a light squeeze. "Next time, I told her, I'll sit right beside you." "Okay." Her eyes brightened for a moment, and then she trotted back, climbing back into her seat like nothing had happened. But something had. Zinnia's expression shuddered tight again. Valora picked at her food like it had suddenly turned tasteless. My mother dabbed at her lip with a napkin, slow and deliberate. I reached for my wine, took a slow sip, and then like clockwork my mother spoke. Next time, she repeated smooth and sharp. Let's not push it. I didn't respond right away. Because sometimes silence is stronger than the perfect comeback. But I looked her right in the eye, and I didn't blink. I let her words hang there. Let's not push it. They wanted a reaction. My mother, my sisters. Something explosive they could point to later and say, see, that's why she doesn't get invited. But I'd grown out of performing for their comfort. I picked up my napkin, quietly smoothed it across my lap, and noticed something behind the partition where the waitstaff disappeared into the kitchen. A stack of chairs. One of them still had a printed name card tucked between the slats. Claire Sinclair. I stood slowly, walked a few steps, enough for one of the junior managers to notice. He stepped toward me, head slightly lowered. Your seat was originally set, ma'am, he said. But the instruction came to remove it. Said there was no need. He didn't meet my eyes. Behind me, I felt Laziel's presence shift. Calm but alert. Who gave that instruction? He asked flatly. I didn't need the answer. I turned back toward the table and said just loud enough for everyone to hear I know exactly who. Callista didn't flinch. Valora picked up her wine glass and twirled it, eyes flicking away. I sat back down slowly, my hands steady, even as something inside me shook loose. For years, I'd explained away the little things. Being left out of group chats, arriving to events, and finding no name card, getting birthday texts hours late if at all. I used to tell myself maybe they forgot. Maybe they were busy. But tonight killed that illusion. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't poor planning. This was a decision. They didn't forget me. They erased me. My phone buzzed gently in my clutch. I slipped it out, checked the screen. A text from Valora. Time stamped 3 hours earlier. Mom says, if you show up, don't make a scene. Don't embarrass yourself. I let the words burn through me, slow and precise. Don't embarrass yourself. Like I was some kind of unstable element that needed containment. I held up the phone to Laziel without a word. He read it, lips tightening into a thin line. His eyes flicked to Valora, then back to me. Would you like me to address it? He asked softly. I shook my head. I've got it. I turned toward Valora, who was mid-sip. You didn't want me here? I said calmly. That much is clear, but at least be honest about it. She rolled her eyes, exasperated. You always make everything about you. I tilted my head. No, I just stopped pretending it wasn't. Shao across the table, Callista cut in, voice silky but sharp underneath. You should be grateful we even let you stay, Claire. Don't turn this into another one of your ego episodes. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. You think I should be grateful? I said slowly. For being erased, for being tolerated, like I'm a stain on your perfect setup. Zinnia shifted uncomfortably. Their husbands avoided looking in my direction entirely. I leaned in slightly. What you should be worried about is what happens when I finally stop playing quiet. There was a stillness at the table now, a pause where no one knew what would land next. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I stood, folded my napkin neatly, and placed it next to my untouched dessert. Then I looked directly at the woman who brought me into the world and decided I wasn't good enough to be in it. You've erased the wrong daughter for the last time. I didn't slam my chair. I didn't raise my voice. I just walked out, calm, controlled, like I was leaving a lecture hall, not a battlefield. The door to the balcony was slightly ajar. Cool air poured in like mercy. Outside, the hum of the city filled the quiet that clung to my ribs. I leaned on the railing, steadied my breath, and watched the movement below. Cars, inching waitstaffs slipping out back for quick breaks, the moon catching on glass. Behind me, I heard the door creak. then a soft clink of glass. Lazial. He came beside me, offering one of the 2 glasses of red he carried. You handled that with restraint I don't think I'd have. I took the glass, but didn't sip. I didn't come here to win, just to stop lying to myself. You don't have to go back in. I looked at him. No, I said, but I will. We stood there in silence for another minute. Then I turned, steadied my shoulders, and walked back inside. The warmth of the restaurant hit like a wave music, low laughter rising from another table nearby. It might have been any Saturday night in San Diego, except it wasn't. As I neared our table, I heard it. Zinnia's husband Everett, with his voice pitched just enough for the words to reach me. I mean, she's just the one who signs the checks, right? Not like she's building anything. Valoris snorted. She just married into money, then tagged along for the ride. They didn't know I was back yet. That was their mistake. I walked right up, smooth and unhurried, glass still in hand. I smiled. That's funny, I said evenly, because the money wasn't from marriage. The money was mine. Zinnia dropped her fork. Valoris turned, her expression sliding from casual to caught. Excuse me, Callista said, her brow arching. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased but clean. I unfolded it slowly, held it between my fingers like a blade. This, I said, is the original wire transfer I made to Laziel, the one that funded the down payment for the lease of the very first location, dated 6 months before my wedding, from an account in my name. No one moved. I passed it to Laziel. He read it, then handed it back. She's not exaggerating, he said, voice calm, but carrying. Claire Tamsin was the first to believe in what we built. Her investment made this possible. Callista blinked. That can't be true. I slid the paper across the table toward her. Then read it. My father finally spoke quietly. Claire, but it was too late for soft voices. I turned my attention back to the table. Every table, every staff member trained with my systems. I wasn't tagging along. I was laying foundation. Valora muttered. So what, a check makes you a genius now? No, I said, but it makes me a builder, and that seems to be the part you all keep forgetting. Silence fell like snow. I stood a moment longer, letting it land. Then I walked away again, this time toward the restroom. I didn't need the room to see me cry. Not that I was crying. Inside the mirror's reflection, I saw a woman I barely recognized, not because she was broken, but because she wasn't anymore. No mascara tracks, no shaking lips, just someone who finally said enough. I was never the failure, I said to the reflection, voice soft. I just loved people who needed someone to hate. A knock. I opened the door. Junie stood there, hands clasped, head tilted. Her voice was small. You made the place I like best, she whispered. They said it was Zinnia's, but I knew. I crouched down to her height. How'd you know? She touched her chest. Because when I come here with Mama, she never smiles. But you do. And with that, everything sharp in me softened. Junie's voice lingered in my ears like a prayer no one taught her. I knelt beside her, brushing a curl behind her ear, and kissed her forehead. She grinned and skipped back toward the dining area, back into the illusion I'd just shattered. I didn't follow her. Not right away. I walked through the garden path that curved along the west side of the restaurant, past rows of manicured rosemary and flickering lanterns. The breeze had a bite now. Evening in San Diego always did this. Warmer in daylight. Cooler once you've said too much. There on a marble pedestal near the garden arch was the plaque. Zinnia's Vision for Women in Hospitality. At first, I thought it was a donor credit. Then I read the etched quote underneath. We rise by building tables for others. We serve not just food, but future. I stared at it, heart slowing, then catching again like a gear grinding into place. That was my line. I'd written it 10 years ago in a scholarship essay when I applied for a program Zinnia didn't even qualify for. The irony stung my chest. I stepped closer and scanned the QR code printed on the side of the plaque, pulling the page up on my phone. There it was, an article from a lifestyle magazine full of staged photos and glossy captions. The narrative was clear. Zinnia had founded a community kitchen program. She'd led mentorship groups for young women. The quote I'd written was credited to her. "They didn't just erase me," I whispered aloud. "They replaced me." Behind me, gravel shifted under measured footsteps. I turned. Laziel approached with the steady calm I needed more than I'd admit. He offered a white envelope embossed and sealed. "Still want to keep your last name after we sign this?" I raised a brow. "Only if you're okay sharing the headline." He smirked. "Hyphenated it is." From the shadows of the patio, a tiny voice chimed in. "Wait! He's your fiancé," Junie had returned, again more observant than any adult at that table ever was. I smiled. "Yes, sweet pea." Her eyes widened like I'd told her the moon was made of caramel. I tucked the envelope into my purse. "You're the only one who noticed anything real tonight." I kissed her temple again and stood. Laziel gently touched my elbow silently, asking if I was ready. "I am," I answered. "It's time." Inside, the air was thicker now. My family sat in carefully posed discomfort like mannequins, realizing someone had opened the storefront window. I moved with ease, heels soundless on the wood floor. No one looked directly at me, but every head turned the moment I stopped at the edge of the table. "This will be the last dinner you'll control my name," Valoris scoffed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I slipped a folded copy of the article onto the table. "It means you don't get to edit me anymore. Check the papers tomorrow. The truth won't be footnoted." Zinnia's face flushed deep crimson. Callista didn't move. My father stared at his wine like it held answers. My mother's jaw twitched, but she said nothing. Zinnia finally stood. "You can't do this. We're family." "Family doesn't steal lives," I said. "It protects them." A beat then, another. "You were never scared of my silence," I said, voice low, but unshaking. "You were terrified of what I might say if I ever decided to speak." The air in the room flattened like someone had sucked the oxygen out with a vacuum. Nobody moved. Not a clink of glassware. Not a fork against a plate. Even the chandelier lights seemed to hum quieter, as if the room itself was listening. One of the waiters hesitated at the dessert cart. I caught his glance, gave the faintest nod. Laziel mirrored it from across the table. Service resumed, but all eyes stayed locked on me. I didn't sit down. I reached for my wineglass, tapped the rim lightly with my ring finger. The sound wasn't loud, but it sliced the silence. Delicate. Final. "I think it's only fair." I began my voice, even since so much of tonight has been about legacy, that I share mine. I opened the folder I had kept tucked beneath my chair. Cream cardstock, crisp edges, inside a stack of photocopies, originals locked away safely elsewhere. I lifted the top page. The community project that Zinnia was honored for. The foundation gala. The article. The award at the City Women's Council. Zinnia stiffened. Valora's brows twitched. It was originally registered under my name. My EIN. My grant application. That plaque in the garden? The quote was from my scholarship essay. Callista muttered, "You've made your point." I raised an eyebrow. "Have I? Because I'm not done." I held up the next sheet. This is the official change of ownership form filed 6 months ago. It lists Zinnia as the new founder. It's signed. With my name forged. Gasps rippled through the smaller tables nearby. The waitstaff had stopped pretending to work. Even the pianist, somewhere near the back, slowed the melody into nothing. Valora stood halfway. "This isn't the time or place." "No," I cut in. The time was years ago when you first decided my silence meant you could steal. I placed the next set of documents on the table. Emails, screenshots, redacted newsletters, donor updates, all with my name erased, often visibly deleted, replaced with hers. I turned to Callista. This is the version submitted to the restaurant. I pressed a button on Lazio's phone, which was connected to the small screen behind the service station. The projection lit up. An email from Callista's own address. A reservation list. My name, Claire Sinclair. Highlighted, crossed out, in red. Submitted to Le Seraphine's event manager. Zania's mouth parted like she might speak, but no words came. Valora's hand trembled as she picked up her water glass and set it down again. Callista didn't blink. You don't understand what image means, she said finally. We were protecting the family. No, I said slowly. You were protecting your control. Lazio shifted beside me silent, watching. I lifted my glass. Not in celebration, not in victory, just closure. To families who decorate the truth, I said, my voice low but steady. May their lies choke them slower than their legacy. I looked around at my father, who had once taught me how to fold napkins into roses, who now looked like a man unraveling quietly at the seams, at my mother, who blinked but didn't cry. At Zania and Valora so still, I could hear their silence louder than their words ever were. And then I looked at Junie. She was standing just outside the private patio door, her little fingers curled around the frame. I walked over to her. She didn't move away. Would you like to go home with me tonight? I asked gently, unsure what her answer would be. Junie looked over her shoulder toward her mother. Zania didn't even turn. Then Junie smiled up at me and whispered only, if I can fold napkins like you taught me. The sunlight poured through my kitchen windows, dancing across the counter, like it had finally been invited in. No shadows lingered in the hallway, just the soft clinking of forks and the gentle hum of a child concentrating. Junie sat at the dining table, tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth, as she folded a napkin into something that resembled a fern, or maybe a seahorse. Either way, it was hers, and she was proud. I think I messed it up, she said, holding it up with both hands. I took it from her, smoothing the soft cotton edges. It's perfect, because you made it, I said, not because it follows the rules. She beamed that wide, freckled grin only kids can pull off without apology, and went back to folding another one. There was a peace in the room that didn't ask for permission, a kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, just whole. Brunch simmered behind me, rosemary potatoes crisping in the oven, eggs waiting to be scrambled. No one was yelling, no one was erasing anyone. It was just us. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it. Subject line, you've made your point. From my mother. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I hit delete. No hesitation, no deep breath. Just done. For years, I'd been told I was too sensitive to lead, too dramatic to be trusted, but the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. I was too quiet to notice, too quiet to be feared, until I stopped being quiet. The eggs sizzled as I cracked them into the pan. I didn't need to read that message. I'd read a version of it 100 times, between the lines of every family dinner, every missing invitation, every sideways glance. The doorbell rang. I dried my hands and opened the door to find a courier standing there holding a thin manila envelope. For Ms. Claire, he said. I signed and thanked him already, knowing what was inside. I didn't even need to open it. An hour earlier, my lawyer had called. The board has moved to suspend Callista and Zinnia, pending further review of the forged documents, she said. Do you want to pursue charges? I remember standing by the window watching Junie sketch on the patio. The breeze was soft. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel like a clenched fist. No, I'd told her, let them sit with it. let them wake up every morning knowing I could have. There are some punishments only time can deliver, and some truths only silence can carry. Junie came over again this time with a piece of paper in hand. A drawing. Crayon flowers bloomed around a small, cozy-looking building. Over the front door, she'd written in wobbly capital letters, Claire's table. I crouched beside her heart, stretching in ways I hadn't felt since I was her age. When I grow up, she said shyly, "Can I build something with you?" Tears pricked my eyes before I could stop them. "You already are." We sat together on the rug, folding napkins side by side. Hers were bent and wrinkled. Mine were neat, familiar. Hers mattered more. I used to think strength looked like standing in front of a crowd with receipts and declarations, and maybe it does sometimes. But this was quieter, truer. My voice now lives in every corner of this apartment, in every inch of space. I no longer apologize for occupying. In every fold of fabric, Junie proudly creases with her small, ink-smudged fingers. They gave me silence, hoping I'd disappear in it. But I built something louder, a life that doesn't need their seat. Because I built the whole damn table. Have you ever been erased by the people who were supposed to love you? What did you do when you finally had enough? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.